Daughter Arise channel. My name is Yvonne, and this channel is all about bringing you content to do with childhood sexual abuse. On this channel, I've shared things to do with my experience of going through this childhood trauma. I also share news stories and different things to do with this subject. And today, I am very fortunate to have a lovely lady on by the name of Beth, who has agreed to come on the channel to share a bit about her experience of going through this childhood abuse, her journey towards healing and the things in between. And we're just going to get into that today. Before we get into the interview, I do just need to give a trigger warning, just because of the nature of what we're discussing. If you do feel that you need to take a break or prepare yourself before listening, please do so. Obviously, this video has been recorded, so you can always come back to it at a later time. But just do remember to just exercise self-care when it comes to this, because obviously there are many survivors out here who do get triggered by anything to do with this topic. So just be warned, obviously, because of what we're talking about, you might find it upsetting. So without further ado, I just want to welcome Beth. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Beth, could you just tell us a little bit overall about yourself?
Okay, so I'm Beth Ann, but everyone calls me Beth. I live in South Wales, grew up in South Wales. I'm a specialist teacher of the deaf. And the reason I went into that is because my father's deaf. I live with my 2 dogs, a rabbit and a hamster.
Wow. Well, my daughter here's got a cat, so I wasn't really an animal person before, but since she's got the cat, you know, I really do like her cat a lot. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. So can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, just in general? What was your childhood like, you know, your family environment?
So I felt that my childhood was very happy and very I didn't have any major terrible things that happened. My parents didn't split up. They took good care of us. I'm the eldest of 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. And I mean, sometimes there were issues because of my father being deaf. My mum had to carry quite a lot. It felt like she was the one that sort of ruled the roost, quite a matriarchal home. And yeah, my parents were missioners to the deaf, blind and disabled from the time I was 12 years old. They lived by faith. They had people from the church supporting them. So we didn't have an awful lot of money, but I was a good girl. I was converted as a child. I went to school, I worked hard, and then went on to university and so on. But it was a happy childhood. You know, we didn't have lots, but we had enough.
Okay. So when was your kind of childhood years? Because I was born 76. So my childhood years was like 76 to about 89, 90. How about you? What was your kind of childhood years kind of era?
Same as you. I was born in 76. I was born September
Oh,
76. So
okay.
yeah, so we're the same age.
Yeah. So you're a Gen X.
I am Gen X and proud.
Yes.
You know, I don't remember an awful lot from the late 70s, but
Yeah.
the 80s and early 90s were definitely my childhood era.
Okay. Is there any particular kind of things you remember from your childhood era that really stuck out to you that you really enjoyed? Like, you know, like maybe playing out with your friends or a TV program or a pop star or anything like that you remember?
Yeah, so I definitely loved playing out the front with my friends. There were a lot of neighbours' kids that lived on our estate, so we used to play with them. When we got bikes, we used to go off on our bikes as well. And TV programs, I just loved all of the retro stuff. I loved Mr. Ben, Bagpuss,
Yeah.
Minnie and the Magic Torch, all those sorts of things that kids would have no idea what you're talking about now.
Yeah. Probably seem like really like prehistoric to, like, you know,
Yeah.
young people now. But yeah, I always like to kind of, anytime I meet somebody who's Gen X, I always like to kind of ask them these things to see what they remember as well, because
Yeah,
we were about before internet, before all that, so it's a different time period.
absolutely. Yeah.
As well. So I mean, obviously that's a bit about your childhood and those types of things. So how did you come to you know, with your abuse, how did it happen, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't mind you asking. I'm very open about it now. I wasn't before, but as I've gone through healing, I'm very open, especially if it can help people. So my abuser was my mum's best friend's husband. And my mum and her best friend at the time, They used to spend time together praying, seeing each other. Their family had 4 children as well. They had 3 boys and a girl, but the 2 older ones were quite a lot older than us. Their 3rd child was 2 years older than me, and their 4th child was the same age as my youngest brother, and they were in the same class at school. The gentleman used to give us lifts to Sunday school, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. So we knew the family quite well, and I trusted them. I was a very trusting child anyway. It went on over a number of months, but I couldn't tell you exactly when it started, and I couldn't tell you exactly when it finished, except that it was the summer of 1987.
How old would you have been there, if you don't
I was
mind?
10. I was 10 years old.
Yep.
And I remember it happened once in his house, and it happened once in, on church property, the church that we were attending. The gentleman used to help with lifts for the disabled folk that used to come to my parents' meetings. My parents used to have a meeting once a month on a Saturday in term time for the blind, and this gentleman used to help with lifts. What had happened at his house had already happened. Now, when it first started happening, I didn't know that what he was doing was wrong. I just knew that it felt nice, and I didn't talk to anyone about it at that stage. But on that Saturday, he came in to collect 2 people. I was in the hallway of this church hall, and I was there on my own, and he beckoned me to go upstairs. I knew exactly what he wanted me to go upstairs for, and, I went. So we went into this room, and he started doing what he'd done before. Yeah. And I remember saying to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Exercises." And I was like, okay. And he used to call me a name from the language of his country that he'd come from. And those 2 things I have never, ever forgotten. It went on a little bit longer, and unfortunately my underwear came down, and I realised then, what's going on? And I think he realised that things had gone too far. And we just went back downstairs. I think at that point it was when I asked him what he was doing. Because even though I was very innocent for my age, I realised that when it comes to underwear, you don't do that. You just don't do that. Not even my own father would do that, So we came downstairs. He took the people away that he was given a lift to, and my mum took the 4 of us home in the car. And I said to my mum, I started telling her about what had happened. And as soon as she realised what I was saying, she shut the conversation down, because I had my younger siblings there who would have been between 9 and 5. And she said, "Wait till we get home, Beth," she said. So when we got home, I told her what had happened. And I don't know what her emotions or feelings were about it. She would obviously have been quite disturbed, quite upset, angry. I don't know. Weirdly, at the time, even though I knew it was wrong, I told my mum, I thought, Mum will sort it out. And I just got on with my life. So my mum then contacted the man, and he was terrified, because he knew that what he'd done was illegal, wrong. And he told my mum that he'd been praying that I wouldn't tell her.
Yeah.
So my mum, I don't know what happened after that, but my mum went with the gentleman. But my mum then contacted the minister of our church. And she told him what had occurred, and he said, "I need to get some advice." So we don't know to this day who he spoke to, whether it was another church officer or someone from outside the church.
Yeah.
I can't remember, can't tell you how long it took till he came back to speak to my mum, but eventually he spoke to my mum, and my mum said to me, he said that if this got out, it would destroy the wife of my abuser. It would destroy her life, destroy her family, destroy her peace, her mental health. I don't know.
Could I just ask you something before we go into that? Couple of things. Obviously, you mentioned the abuse happened at 10. How many times did he do this to you?
To my memory, twice. There might have been other times, but I might have blocked it out of my memory. I clearly remember it happening in the house. His house, in his kitchen, and I clearly remember it happening that time in the church hall. But I think because it went too far that one time,
Yeah.
it stopped. If
Yeah.
it's not gone that far, it would probably have gone on for longer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And also as well, you mentioned um the first time, obviously, because I think this is really important that you brought this up, because one of the things that kind of a lot of survivors who I've spoken to and worked with over the years have mentioned, is the act of when it has happened to them as a child, feeling guilt and shame, because in that moment the feeling of it felt nice,
yeah,
but then obviously the feeling, another feeling coming in as well, that something didn't feel right. That is one of the things that a lot of survivors do say. They say that, because the body's natural response is to being stimulated, they
yeah,
didn't understand that, but it felt nice. But then the feeling of guilt and shame, and you kind of just touched on that a bit as
yeah,
well, like the fact of that feeling of it feeling nice, obviously because your body's been stimulated, but at the same time, you understood when he tried to, take down your underwear, that something was wrong. Can you explain a little bit about that for us?
yeah. So I think when it was in his house in the kitchen, it
Yeah.
felt nice, but it felt like he hadn't crossed a line because I,
Yeah.
it wasn't just me and him in his house. I'm sure my siblings were there.
Yeah.
We would have been the only ones in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Perhaps because he was in his home, he felt more brave. I don't know, but I just remember it felt nice, and so when he asked me to go up into that room, I wanted to go because I knew this was going to feel nice. And at that
Yeah.
point, I had no inclination that what he was doing was wrong. I hadn't crossed that line
Mm,
until the underwear.
mm,
And even at that point, I didn't feel guilty that I'd done something wrong. I
yeah.
felt that he was doing something that he shouldn't do. So I asked
Mm,
him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Exercises." And I think because I'd asked him the question, he thought, "I better stop because she's obviously aware that what I've done is has crossed the line."
yeah.
It was later on that I felt the shame and I
Yeah.
felt guilt and I blamed myself.
Yeah. We'll come to that as well, because I think that's really important that we talk about that. It's very interesting when you have somebody who is a perpetrator of sexual harm, whether that would be a paedophile or sex offender,
Mm.
how they will try and frame what they're doing in a way that they feel is okay.
Yes.
Like telling you, you know, that it's exercise. And
Mm.
obviously, you have an understanding of, in a way, of what exercise is, because you've done it in school and different things
Yeah.
like that. And for him to tell you that, obviously shows that he's trying to manipulate that situation for you to believe something that wasn't true. When you told your mum, what do you think, or what do you remember expecting? Did you expect to see a reaction out of her, or you just didn't know what to expect? You just knew that you told your mum this thing.
Do you know, that's a really good question. I've never thought that before. I just knew that what he'd done to me wasn't right. And who do you go to? You go to an adult you trust. So
Yeah.
I went to my mum because my mum was the one who dealt with the punishment, the problems, if you were ill. So she was my safe space,
Yeah.
my touchstone. So I went to her. But interestingly, I didn't know that it was bad enough that I waited until my siblings went there. You know,
Yeah.
I was telling her something. I guess perhaps I don't know. That's a really good. I've never thought about that before.
That's okay.
Yeah, I've never considered that.
You were telling me, and telling us as the viewers, that your mum went to somebody in the church,
The minister, yeah,
um,
the
the
pastor.
minister. Can I just ask, what denomination of church are you? Not that it matters, but
Mm.
in a way, it kind of is important, because obviously we see in the news about the Catholic Church and the Church
Mm.
of England, all the different kind of scandals to do with sexual abuse,
Yeah,
of young children, obviously the non-recent cases. Um, but could you just explain what denomination you grew up in, of faith?
sure. So I grew up in an evangelical church.
Okay.
It was a very traditional Reformed evangelical church. So
Yeah.
it was pews, organ, hymns, King James version of the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, it was very old fashioned compared to, say, a Pentecostal church or a charismatic church. It was
Yeah.
that denomination. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's interesting to know because with my own faith, I would probably say when I gave my life to Christ, it probably came up. I probably came up through the Pentecostal church at
Mm,
21 years old. I wasn't born into a faith-based family or anything like
yeah.
that. I found faith later on in that time. And you were just explaining as well off the back of that when your mum went to somebody in the church, she was advised by
Mm.
the minister, and the onus was put back on you.
Yes, yes. So he said that it would destroy the wife of the abuser, and he also said it would damage the reputation of the church. So the decision was to do nothing. And because of the nature of, I mean, you may be aware of this, that for some people, and particularly in that time, it was the late 80s. Safeguarding wasn't a thing.
Yeah,
That if your minister told you that this is the right thing to do, you did it.
yeah,
You believed that he was going to make a right decision.
yeah,
He would make a godly decision. There was, or at least there seemed to be, no thought for the fact that I needed to be protected.
yeah.
There needed to be justice meted out for what I had been through. There needed to be consequences, but nothing.
And obviously, us coming up through the 80s as well, there was no safeguarding, and for a lot of people that might seem quite bizarre because I do a lot of kind of work within different kind of arenas within children's social care.
Mm.
And when I was talking about my own experience coming up in the 80s, when I got taken into care and disclosure and all that stuff, safeguarding really wasn't a thing. And as an organization, really, the church should have reported,
Yeah.
to the police. They should have been, mandated to report that to the police because it's not an in-house issue. It's a safeguarding issue and it's a crime as well.
Yeah, and it was, and I finally, and I'll get to this part of the story, when I finally reported it to the police years later, I did a little bit of research online to see what the law was in 1987, and he could have gone to prison because I was under 13.
That's just so terrible, but do believe I understand what it's like at a time not to get justice.
Yeah.
You were going through that at 10. I went through that at 9 to the age of 13 as well. Whether it's once we go through it or a number of times, it is still sexual abuse. Sexual harm has happened to us as children, and it's really a shame when justice can't be served, where the perpetrator of the abuse is not being held to account by the law for what they have done.
Yeah.
So can you tell us how this abuse affected your childhood, if you saw any ways in which it affected you after those times that it happened?
So throughout my childhood, I would say it affected me very little, but it didn't affect me in no way at all. I do remember that I felt like I had this dirty secret that I was keeping. I had to protect my younger siblings. They couldn't know. My mum and dad obviously knew, the minister, whoever he'd spoken to, plus my abuser. And at that point, that was about it. When the decision was made by my pastor at the time, that the summer holidays of 1987, my abuser actually came to my house. I was outside playing with my siblings and my friends. He came to the house. I was called back into the house. And I remember standing in the lounge and he apologized to me. And I said, that's okay. And then I went back outside to play with my friends. So there was a sort of, a protocol that was done. He's come to apologize. Therefore, everything's okay. So I remember that happening in the summer of 1987. And then I remember my sister talking about something that had happened to her. And I can't remember whether that was that same year or a couple of years later, like somebody had touched her on the back of her leg or something. And I said, oh my gosh, that's nothing compared to what happened to me. Now, I don't know if at that point, that was when my sister found out, but that's the only thing I really remember until I became an adult. It was after I became a young adult that it really started to hit me what had happened.
So you talk about it affecting you when you became an adult. What kind of age are we talking when you started to notice that what happened to you as a child had
19.
affected you?
I was 19.
19. And can you kind of share with us how you started to see that affecting your life as an adult? What kind of things were you experiencing?
I had a Saturday job in Debenhams when I was 17 to 22. And I remember one time I used to get the bus back because I didn't drive at that point, and I saw an advert on a bus stop, and it said 1 in 100 people who walk past this advert will have been abused as a child. And it really struck me, and I thought, great, I'm a statistic. And then I remember another day I was walking to uni, and it just hit me because in the 80s, the term paedophile wasn't bandied around. But
No.
in the sort of late 90s, it started to be talked about a little bit more. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, that means he was a paedophile because I was 10.
Yeah.
And I just started thinking, I have this power to destroy this man's life with the knowledge that I have, but I can't do anything with it because who would believe me? There's no evidence. There was no camera in the room. It would be my word against his. And it was then really that I started to feel the shame of what had happened to me. I also started to feel guilt that if he did it to somebody else, that would be partly my fault because I hadn't spoken out about it. I started to try and justify what had happened to me, as in thinking, well, it was your fault. You went up into the room. You willingly went into the room with him. You knew exactly what he was going to do. So therefore, actions have consequences. And I also used to think, well, at least he did it to me and not my sister. That was a big one, a really big one. It was kind of like, well, it was awful, it happened, but rather me than my sister.
Did you ever think then during this kind of time when you were processing this as a young adult that you were a child and he was an adult and the responsibility fell on him as the adult, regardless of you willingly going into the room and all this stuff? Did you ever think at all during this time when you were having these thoughts that actually he was the adult and I was the child and he shouldn't have done that to me?
Not really. I did know deep down that he was the person who had done the wrong thing. But I just was so overwhelmed with the guilt, the disgust, the shame. I started to think that I was soiled goods. I was dirty. I was, who's going to want me now? How am I supposed to tell a man that I get into a relationship with? And I also remember, it's just popped into my head, saying to God, you cannot allow this to be the only time I'm ever in an intimate situation with a man. You cannot. You owe me. You cannot allow that to be the case. I very much wanted to have a boyfriend, to settle down, get married, have a family. I hadn't been put off men for life, but I just sort of thought, right, God, you owe me now because you allowed me to go through this. I have no idea why you allowed it. I'm not very happy with you. So
Yes.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I totally understand. I had a lot of years of that, of asking God why he allowed my dad to do that, and all the feelings that you are talking about, feeling like dirty goods, soiled goods, all that stuff. I felt exactly the same. So I totally understand what you're actually saying. What you're saying to me really does hit home for me because those are all the same things I felt. So you were talking about obviously it not wanting it to be your experience of intimacy and stuff like that with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Do you think up until that point, like once you got to teenage years, and we're talking about your at your adult years, do you think that kind of made you, your experiences of going through abuse as a child, did it make you apprehensive of men?
No, weirdly, it didn't. Um, no, I'd say that my more recent experiences, which are a separate thing, have made me more wary of men. But no,
Yeah,
there's a lot of neurodivergence in my family. I'm waiting
yeah,
to get tested for ADHD, and I think that I think because of what happened to me, something stopped at 10. I've always had a very childlike outlook, very youthful outlook on life, very
yeah,
curious outlook on life. And I've always been very trusting of people, like a puppy. You know, if you kick a puppy
yeah,
and they come to you like they've done something wrong and they
yeah,
still love you and they still want you, that's kind of what I'm like.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's that childlike innocence, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
So you, I mean, you were talking about the sense of guilt and shame and everything that you have felt because of this experience. Once that kind of thing of realizing exactly who he was and what he had done from that advert,
Yeah.
how do you think abuse affected your kind of sense of self,
Oh gosh.
trust, relationships? Obviously, you said, you know, when it's come to men, it's not really affected that. But how overall do you think it has affected your sense of self, trust? Do you have any trust issues, sense of self, relationships? Could be even relationship with your mom or whoever. How do you think those experiences
That's a
affected?
really good question. I had a very low opinion of my worth, massively low opinion of my worth. I felt that I wasn't as good as other people. I became very much a people pleaser, very compliant. I would do things that I didn't necessarily want to do in order that people would like me.
Mm,
I felt that no one was ever going to want me as a partner, and because I'm a Christian and women tend to outnumber men in churches anyway,
yeah, that's
um,
true.
I was well into my 30s before I had my first boyfriend, and
Mm,
I used to just link that to the fact that I was this soiled person, and when things didn't work out, I used to say, well, what do you expect, Beth? What do you expect? You're soiled, you're dirty goods. It was almost like I was self-flagellating in order
mm,
to process the fact that I hadn't met anybody. There were times where I felt, and I felt an awful lot of guilt about this, I felt upset with my parents that they hadn't gone to the police, and also upset with my father because my mother had dealt with everything. I actually had a conversation with my father in the last year where I was very honest with him, and I told him how I felt very let down by him. And I could see he was getting very, very upset. And I thought, this is killing me telling you this, but I have to get it off my chest. And
mm.
now it's almost like there's been a shift where he's a lot more sympathetic and looking out for me, which is nice, but it's awful that I had to have that conversation with him. So it was all these conflicting emotions. And yeah, it was just, I was trying to, and I was keeping it a secret. And
Mm.
yeah,
What kind of things like support did you or help did you try and get to deal with all these very difficult and hard emotions and situations? Did you, yeah, what kind of things did you reach out for? Did you go therapy, or how did you kind of process all these things that were happening to you?
absolutely nothing as far as therapy is concerned until I was
Yeah,
about 26.
yeah,
I became obsessed with things being just so. I'd always been a very neat, organized person, but it became exacerbated. I also became absolutely obsessed with physical imperfections,
yeah.
spots, blemishes, to the point where I would spend hours looking in the mirror, hours looking at a particular blemish on my skin. I thought at one point that I had body dysmorphic disorder, but I now realize it was all linked. I was trying to control the controllable. But when I got to about 26, I started having private counselling, and I had CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy.
Yeah.
And from 2003, I started taking antidepressants, and I've been on them ever since.
Okay. And what sort of what? out of all the kind of support things that you've had, what's helped you the most to deal with the things that have happened to you as a child?
Well, therapy has helped. I find talking therapy really helps me. But I would say the best thing that helped was reporting what had happened to me.
Okay,
That was
so
most cathartic.
yeah, so tell us a bit about that. What happened to make you want to report it? Was there a trigger to want to report it, or you just felt maybe from the sense of injustice you had as a child that is something that you wanted to do?
For many, many years, for decades, I was determined that I would take it to my grave. There's been a sort of warped sense of protection of my abuser, that I didn't want to destroy his life or his family's lives. Of course,
Mm.
that seed had been planted by my minister when I was 10. 5 years ago, I'm a teacher, as I said, and there was a lady who'd come to do some supply teaching at my school in the English department, and I found out she was a Christian, and we hit it off, and we decided to go and have coffee after work. And I don't know what it was, well, probably God, but I felt led that I could confide in her about what had happened to me. Can't even tell you how the conversation got to that point.
Mm.
When I told her, it was the most righteously indignant response I had ever had. And she said to me, Beth, you must report this. And I was like, whoa, whoa, Nellie, no, 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 no. And it turned out that she had been told by another person in the not too distant past that they had been through abuse and she'd been able to support them. So she said to me, okay, would you mind if I contact the church where it happened and ask them what their safeguarding protocol is? I won't mention your name. So she did that. She told me what they'd said. And then after 2 months, I finally had the courage to ring the safeguarding charity that was linked to the church where I've been abused. So it was somebody responding with such horror. And even though
Mm.
it had been 34 years since I'd been abused,
Mm.
she really encouraged me. I think, it was God as well that this
Mm.
happened, but that's how it started.
Wow, I mean, there's a statistic I always share on some of my videos actually that says the average time for somebody who's gone through childhood sexual abuse to disclose is anything upwards of 20 years.
Mm.
And listening to you just share when you decided to disclose and how it came about, it seems on average with that, the fact that it was 34 years later. So when it came to the church, obviously you go into the safeguarding at your church. What was their response? How did they kind of react to you telling them about your early experiences of disclosing and the minister's involvement in that?
Okay, so the minister who was the minister at the time, he died in 2016.
Right.
It's my greatest regret that I never confronted him.
Yeah.
I just want to put in at this point that 5 years after I was abused, my abuser was made a deacon in that church.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And not long after
Wow.
that, he was given a work amongst people from Arabic backgrounds. And he'd have a Sunday service, and the service took place in the same room where he abused me.
Oh my
So
God.
I know you just couldn't make it up. So the minister who was there at the time, he died. Once the ball started rolling, I spoke to 318 and they said to ring 101, and I made a report to the police. I wrote to the current minister at the church, and because I thought, I don't want this to just land on their doorstep. I want him to know. And I thought that was a respectful way to do it. And he was completely the polar opposite. He was saying, even if this causes issues for the church, if it causes issues for the family, what the right thing is what has to be done. And my
Mm.
sister, actually, who goes to the church, she said he asked after me once, and she said, Beth, he was shaking with anger. So thankfully, by 2021, the response I had from the church was incredible,
Yeah.
which helped.
Yeah. So I bet when you got the response that you got, like when you got in contact to when you were a child, it kind of just made you wonder, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is, I mean, what you've just said there about him becoming a deacon in the church, and this is the problem I have um, with the church keeping
Mm.
sexual abuse of children in house.
Yes.
They love to do it. They like to cover up things, but you see what happens when they cover up. It allows then the perpetrator or the person who's caused that sexual harm to the child to then flourish in another position within the church. This is why safeguarding is so important.
Yeah.
That I'm just absolutely, even though in itself, hearing it happens a lot.
Mm.
Hearing your experience, it just shocks me again, because how that must have felt for you as a 15-year-old girl seeing that, because you said obviously it was a
Yeah.
few years ago.
I think I became more angry about it once I was a young adult and
Yeah,
I started to process things. At the time, forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. It was, I'm a good Christian young girl. I'm doing what God would want me to do. I'm forgiving him. So at the time, it didn't concern me, but it was later on. And one of the things that I've struggled massively, Yvonne, is the anger that I had towards my ex-pastor, my late
yeah,
pastor. I've been more angry with him than I have been with
mm,
my abuser, which
yeah.
doesn't make sense. But at the same time,
It does.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense actually, because obviously you reported something that was wrong
Mm,
to your mum. Your mum went for spiritual counsel, wisdom to get advice,
mm,
and this minister did not do the right thing. This
yeah.
is a cover that they use to say God, doing the right thing by God. God does not condone this. God does not condone abuse of children.
No,
Um,
no,
God is a God of
no.
justice. God is a God of justice. He's put courts, he's put things in authority within
Mm,
the lands of this world that when crimes happen, they're supposed to go through the justice system. So for him to kind of put the onus and shame on you and not report it and try and keep it in house, and then within that church promoting this paedophile, this person being promoted within the church to a deacon where he's
yeah.
got access to more children is beggars belief.
It does. It does. And I was told when I was reporting it, and that took about a year, that process.
Yeah,
I was told that people who do that, they do it more, they will do it more than once. So I don't know whether he did it before me or after me. I now know that whatever happened is not my fault.
yeah,
It's just awful to think that. And as you say, he was in a position of authority where he would have had more access to children because he was a trusted figure in the church.
exactly, exactly. It's a terrible thing, when this happens, because it just allows them to go unchecked when it should have gone to the police for the
Yeah.
police to deal with accordingly. So you said it's been a year-long process for that. What was the outcome of that process then?
So it was reported at the end, 24th of August, I reported it, 2021. And then, fair play, the police came out the same day,
Yeah,
one man, one woman, and they took my report. And then at the beginning of September, I had to go to have an interview, recorded interview. It was 2 hours long. I was exhausted by the end of it, and I had to go through
yeah,
everything. And then it just went through the system, really. The police were really great. I had support from New Pathways in South Wales. I had trauma therapy.
yeah,
Eventually, it took about 18 months for me to get trauma therapy, but I had support from New Pathways. I had an ISPA, I think it is, and they supported
yeah,
me they'd ring me and check in on me whilst the process was going on. And the police interviewed people who were in the church at the time, who were elders, and
yeah.
spoke to my mum, spoke to me. And yeah, so it took about a year. But unfortunately, my abuser has Alzheimer's or dementia. So he wouldn't have
Okay.
been fit to go to court. And he hadn't been diagnosed. And I requested that he have an independent assessment, and they said, yeah,
Yeah.
he got dementia. So he was unable to go to court. Now I had a letter handed to me by one of the officers who was supporting me with the CPS decision. I've never opened it, and I will never open it. I've still got it, but I know that they said no because he has dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
But I am never going to open that letter because whilst I understand that's the way the system works, I
Yeah.
thought I am not going to open it because I know what the decision is. I was very upset,
Yeah.
but I thought, right, even once I calmed down and and everything, I realized that having talked about it, that I'm not ashamed about it. I'd had the counselling, I'd had the support. I know that God will deal with him in his way, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that God will deal with him and also deal with my dad as well.
Mm.
Because I didn't get justice as well. So I totally understand that feeling that you're saying about feeling completely upset about this. And you're just extremely brave and courageous, Beth. You
Thank
know, the experience of having to go through that for a year and all the different things that you've had to kind of encounter on the way and then come out on the other side of it to not get the outcome that you
you.
know probably would have wanted to expect. It must have been so devastatingly upsetting for you.
It was. I mean, there was one thing I was able to do, which I requested to do.
Yeah.
The church that I was at as a child, um, they are very good with their safeguarding. They have annual DBS training. They're really, really strict on everything.
Yeah.
And I asked them, could I speak at their DBS training? And they
Yeah.
agreed. So I think it was 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now,
Yeah.
I went and I took a picture of myself as
Yeah.
a 10-year-old. This was my 10th birthday, so it was before
Yeah.
it happened. And I read out, I didn't name anybody, but it would have been blatantly obvious which minister I was talking.
Yeah.
I read this out. You could have heard a pin drop.
Yeah.
And I did get a bit upset when I was reading it out, but I thought I have to do this. And it was
Yeah.
just to say to them, look, I know that safeguarding is a lot better now, but I am somebody who was not safeguarded. And I want to show you the damage that it can do. Because in 2015, my head broke and I had to have 4 months off work. And it still took another 6 years before I reported it. But
Mm.
for me, reporting it was the best thing I could ever have done. It's
Mm.
really given me so much more freedom because I now know it was not my fault. I have no reason to be ashamed.
Yeah.
And like it says in Romans 8, verse 28, all things work together for good. Would I have chosen what happened to me? Absolutely
Mm.
not.
No.
But can God use it? 100%. And
Yeah.
even just doing this with you,
Yeah.
if what happened to me and me being able to speak out about it can help one person,
Yeah.
it's not that it would have been worth it, but there will be something good to come from it.
It's like a sense of empowerment and a sense. It's like a different sense of justice as well, isn't it? In a way, because I can understand when you say about obviously going back to that same church
Mm.
and being part of their DBS training about safeguarding and sharing your experience. That is something that is so powerful. You don't wish it would ever have happened to you. I wouldn't wish that on my worstest enemy going
Yeah.
through sexual abuse as a child. Um, but it does kind of give some type of comfort knowing that some good can come out of it,
Yeah.
somebody else for future children.
Or somebody might happen across this video and feel she understands, she gets it. She felt the same way that I feel now. And maybe it will encourage somebody to speak out and say, maybe they've never told anybody what happened to them.
Yeah.
I did. But maybe they've not even told a soul. They've carried it for years and years and years, and they may feel now I can talk to someone about it, or I can even go to the police about it. I know that going to the police is not what everybody's able to do, and that's absolutely fine. But maybe just watching this video, someone will be like, somebody understands, somebody gets it, and that, because most people are not. But yeah, it's unfortunately we live in a sin-sick world,
Mm,
but God is in control, and
mm,
he had a purpose for what I've been through,
mm,
and I'm not angry with God anymore.
mm.
I still don't understand why,
Yeah,
but then I think about what my Savior did for me,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, most definitely. I think it's so powerful to hear you speak, because I think once you take it out of your own kind of domain of thinking, why this happened to me, what was it, something I did as a child? Because I used to get these punishing thoughts all the time about it, thinking, oh, because I was kind of the jokey one out of my brother and sister, the one that was cracking jokes, and that made me stand out the
Yeah.
three of them, and that warranted this unwanted attention from my dad. Being stuck in this kind of cycle of thinking for so long, and then obviously finding my faith in Christ and having God remove that condemnation and all the kind of get the kind of blame, guilt and shame that I felt, it really did release something in me. And yeah, I hope that whoever is watching this video can, hear that, the shame or the guilt or the blame, or thinking you've got something to do with it, has nothing to do with you. It's totally to do with the perpetrator. It's totally to do with them. It's their problem. Even as children, we cannot be responsible for adults.
Yeah, 100%.
So before we go on to your healing journey, as we start to wrap up, if somebody was thinking years later, like you, obviously 34 years later,
Mm.
being at a stage, obviously, of going to the police, what three bits of advice would you give them to help them to prepare to do that?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would say, first of all, don't think that it's ever too late. The law in this land says that, it doesn't matter if it was 5 years or 50 years. Obviously, your perpetrator still has to be alive, but there is no time limit on you going. And there is a lot more out there now. People are a lot more prepared to support you. There's a really good system out there in comparison to 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. I would also say, if you can, don't do it alone. Have somebody who, maybe it's somebody who already knows, maybe it's somebody that you can trust. Have that person alongside with you, because it can be a very lonely journey. I
Yeah,
never dreamt ever about my abuser, but when I reported it, I was having regular dreams about him, and also about my late minister. I remember confronting him in my dream. I got to do it in my dream.
yeah,
Um, it's not something that you should have to carry on your own. So if you can have somebody with you. And also, I suppose, if it doesn't end up going to court, to have counselling, have trauma therapy, work through those feelings of guilt and shame and blame, because that is part of the process of reporting it. At least it was for me. I
yeah,
never got my day in court, and I
yeah,
would have liked to have had that. And I would have stood there with no screen, and I would have looked him dead in the eye. But he didn't
yeah,
know who I was because of the dementia.
yeah,
So I was very worried at the beginning that it wouldn't end up going to court. But by the end, even though it was disappointing, it didn't matter, because the process and the counselling and the healing from all these wrong thoughts that I was having about myself, I was able to heal from that.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, and I hope that encourages any of you listening,
Yeah.
who may have been pondering maybe for a long time whether to go to the police or not. Maybe you're thinking, oh, it's non-recent, or what they might say is historical. It's too old to for the police to look into. I know for a fact that the police will look into any crime that is reported to them. I've supported on people on their journey as well. So that's very useful advice. Thank you for sharing that, Beth. So you mentioned about healing.
Mm.
What has your healing journey been like so far, post all this stuff? How has it been going?
Well, it happened during the process that during that year. I was very fired up to support people who had been through a similar situation like mine.
Yeah,
I've come to learn that it's not something that people really talk about very much. And it was a little bit frustrating because I even said in the DBS meeting, if you know of anybody it has happened to you, I'm here if you want to have somebody to talk to. And hopefully there wasn't anyone in that room that knew someone or had been through it themselves.
yeah,
So I became very determined that I was never going to be ashamed to talk about what I've been through. And I will tell people if it happens to come up in conversation what happened to me. I'm very open about it. And what I've discovered is that people are very, very compassionate and very kind. And it also gives you an opportunity to sometimes talk about things. People might have things that they're stressed about, and then they'll open up to you. I've wanted to, and I haven't, and I don't know if I ever will get to, but I'd like to write a book. I'd like to write a book about my experience, just to highlight the failures, but also how God has kept me, giving Him the glory. I've had some other difficulties, which I won't go into on this interview, but I've had some other difficulties where there's been abuse in my life. And interestingly, because I've been through what I've been through as a child and I've reported it, that's actually helped me through this situation as well.
Yeah.
I'm now going through a different healing stage in my life.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the healing that I've gone through reporting what happened to me as a child has actually made me stronger for this season of my life as well. I'm a warrior now. I will not ever be silenced about my abuse by man, woman, or child. That's what I am at the moment. And if you said to me 5 years ago that I'd be where I am now, I would have told you to shut up.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, when you see where you've come from to where you are now. I always say the same thing. If you would have told me 5, 10, 15 years ago I would be where I am now, and my view of how I see myself is not through the lens of being a victim or a survivor of abuse, but just through Yvonne as a woman trying to live her life.
Yeah.
I would have told you you're crazy. That would never happen
100%.
for me.
Yeah. And this is the power of God, how He
most
uses these things,
Yeah, most definitely. God has been pivotal in my healing journey. Something I share within my book Daughter Arise, which I released in 2010 as well. Yeah. So talking about understanding of self, like I just said, my understanding of self is completely different to how it was 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, because I don't look at myself through the lens of my experience of going through sexual abuse as a survivor anymore. I look at myself through a different lens of a woman who's just trying to live her life in God, trying to achieve my dreams and trying to discover myself. Because for many years, that was all by the wayside as I dealt with over 23 years of dealing with the aftermath of trauma. So for you, has your view of self changed?
Yes.
And how has it changed?
Look, I still have days where I think, I'm not that great. I don't have tickets on myself. Then. But I now know that I did not deserve what happened to me. I had absolutely no, I didn't cause it. I know that I am just as worthy as the next person. I know that I am loved by God, that I am a daughter of the King, and that, there are some people who are my people and there are some people who are not. And that's okay. I don't have to please everybody now. If I have something that I want to say, I can say it. Sometimes you have to be diplomatic in how you say things, but I'm a lot more outspoken. What I've noticed, and other people have noticed in the last 5 years, I've become this right little sasspot, and I love it.
Yeah.
You know, I was very mousy. You know, when I was in my
Yeah.
20s, you know, I wouldn't have said boo to a goose. Now I'll be
Yeah.
like, right, come on, bring it.
And what strengths do you think you've discovered about yourself through this journey as well? So it sounds like you've obviously, from what you've just shared, that you've discovered the power of your voice.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything else, like one or two other things that maybe you've kind of picked out about yourself that you see as a real strength that has come from, all the things you've gone through with this experience?
I have a massive, massive empathetic spirit.
Yeah.
I'm able to, so I work with high school children, they're deaf, but I also, see some of the hearing children as well. And if children are really upset about something, no matter how little it might seem to an adult, to them, their world is coming to an end, or they're very angry. I'm able to sit them down and be completely calm and talk through things with them. And not every time, but the majority of the time, they will calm down.
Yeah.
And then we'll come to a conclusion, we'll come to a decision, and everything's going to be okay. I've noticed that, I'm able to be like that, particularly because of what I've been through.
Yeah.
And there's a verse in the Bible that says that we comfort others with the comfort whereby we have been comforted.
Yeah. One of my favorite verses.
Yeah. And that was the verse that really spoke to me during what I went through.
Yeah.
Well, during when I was reporting it, because I thought, right, I can do this, I can help others, because I've discovered that people who have a very easy life, not always, but they can be more likely to be self-centered, because I've suffered, because I've struggled.
Yeah.
I have a lot more empathy, and I'm able to comfort. So I think that's a big thing that's come out of it. Sure, yeah.
Okay, so finding your voice and having courage, being empathetic towards others and sensitive to other people. One more. Do you think you have one more that you've discovered about yourself as a
I mean,
strength?
I've always seen people as equal, but never so much as I do now.
Yeah.
I obviously I'm not going to agree with everybody. There are going to be things that people do or ways that people live that I may not think is for me.
Yeah.
But I will. One of the things I always try to teach my students is that we are all equal, and love always wins. And that is what we have to be loving. I have taught children who are from different ethnic backgrounds, children, people of color, people who've got disabilities, people who have got, neurodivergence.
Yeah.
And I will say it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
You get an E for your GCSE. If you've done your best, that's enough for me, because everybody has got different skills. Everybody has got different gifts.
Yeah.
It would be a very boring place if we were all the same.
Yeah.
So I just have a very strong sense that everybody is equal, whether you're the queen,
Yeah.
you are a pauper. We're all going to end up as worm food. That's what I say. So why are you any better than me? You're not, and I'm not better than you.
Yeah, exactly. That is actually very true. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't believe that, but it is.
Not my people.
So, just a couple other questions then, as we finish. One of the things that has been a real area of struggle for a lot of survivors who've gone through childhood sexual abuse is looking after self well-being. Even just a couple of weeks ago, I did a support group, and it was about self-compassion, why we struggle with having compassion for ourselves. And it just opened up a whole conversation about where this lack of self-compassion comes in. As survivors of childhood sexual abuse, that can be a real struggle. Also, as well, just as I said, looking after well-being. What things do you do, like a couple of things that really help you to love yourself, be compassionate to yourself?
This is an area that I'm not very good at, Yvonne. I am the sort of person that I will push and push and push and push and push. But a couple of things that I do like to do. I like when I have the time, in the last couple of years, I've started going to do craft classes.
Oh,
And
nice. I like
I'm
craft.
I'm not very arty. I have a good eye for, things that for aesthetics. I can,
Yeah,
oh, that would look great in my lounge, that would look great in my bedroom, sort of
yeah.
thing. But I'm no artist. But I have done candle making class. I made
Oh, yeah.
it was like a hand knitted pumpkin.
Yeah,
These little classes pop up everywhere. So I
yeah,
do those. And this has only just started happening very, very recently since my
yeah,
husband left me. In the Easter holidays, I thought, right, I'm going to go and have a day trip by myself.
yeah,
Jumped in the car. I went. I saw a farm shop on my way there. I was like, right, I'm going to stop there to have my lunch after.
yeah,
Um, I got on ChatGPT and I said, right, where's really nice to go? And it was a beautiful day. And they said, oh,
yeah,
go down to the harbour. And I thought, you know what? I love it. And I felt exhilarated after I'd had this day.
yeah,
So it's just going out and going places that you like an oldie worldy town.
yeah.
I'm now planning to go on holidays abroad by myself.
Good for
I
you.
want to go to Rome to visit my grandfather's grave as he was killed at the Battle of Monte Cassino.
Yeah,
It's a bit tricky at the minute with my divorce and many
yeah,
years.
yeah,
That's all sorted. I'm going to go to Rome because my
yeah,
grandfather hasn't met any of his grandchildren yet, and it's been
yeah.
50 years.
No, it sounds like you're doing things that you enjoy and you're planning things that you're going to enjoy doing as well, which is very important for well-being.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, it's very difficult when you've gone through this and nobody has put you first, a child, then as an adult to think that you matter and put yourself first. It's a common thing amongst survivors, and that's something I always encourage. Look after your well-being, self-care, and all that stuff. So as we finish, what is it you want to say to the viewers as we finish the video? I know you said you want them, if it helps one person who watches this video, is there any other message you want them to take away from today?
Yeah, I would say to whoever's listening to this, I believe you. I understand you did nothing wrong. And it is possible to heal from this. Know that you are loved, that you are worthy, and that you are just as good as anybody else. And even if you won't get justice, like I didn't, like Yvonne didn't, you are still able to heal in ways that you never knew you could. It may be that you won't get to the point that we have where we're able to speak about it. But if you can get to a point where you realize that it was not your fault, then that's a wonderful place to get to. But know that you are worthy, know that you are loved, know that you are believed, and that things can get better. I never thought it could for me, and it did.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beth,
You're
for sharing
welcome.
that. Thank you so much. So, I hope that if you're listening to this and you feel that you're at a stage, where you're not sure how you feel that your life's going to pan out after going through such horrendous circumstances in your childhood, I hope that you can take Beth's message to heart. And just as we finished, just to let you know as well, Beth will be coming and sharing at the afternoon tea event in September. I will do a whole nother video on that, guys, just to let you know about that event in September. But thank you again, Beth, for sharing your story. And definitely, it's been a real pleasure and an honor to hear your story.
Yes, and just to say to anybody who comes on the 12th of September, I'm a hugger, so if you want a hug, free hugs.
Thank you, Beth.